A written book of glitter kind sits on my Kindle behind all the other things that I should be reading instead. But here we are, so let's all critique this text in this react. Yeah, yeah. Oh, oh. Hey, hi, hello there, and welcome to the cursed recording of An Anthropologist Reads Glitter and Lasers book, A Life Full of Glitter, by Anna O'Brien. And by cursed, I mean this is attempt number 4. Every time I do these, I tell you guys, it's cursed. It's cursed! Alright. If you have not watched the prior chapters to this, I highly recommend going back and doing so, only because it will get you caught up on my major gripes. I will try to summarize very quickly. Mostly, the book desperately needs an editor, and like a line editor for grammar and syntax, and also content. A content editor would have been fabulous as well. Anna tells us that she's going to use scientific evidence to explain her points and then cites nothing. She just says a lot of research shows, studies show, researchers say, trust me, bro. I'm not gonna go for that. My background's in academia, so it doesn't fly in my book. Also, it's kind of, I think I said this in the last episode, it's almost plagiarism. It's like borderline plagiarism, some of the stuff she pulls off in this, because she said she does it a couple times in the 2 chapters we're going to go over. My studies, my research. What research, girl? Just reading a book doesn't make you an expert. But anyway, reading several books makes you an expert. My background is I'm an anthropologist by training. I am a retired field archaeologist. I worked in the field for 20 plus years, something like that, longer than I probably should have. So that's my background. And I'm just kind of applying the standards that I would have been put under writing a book with scientific information in it. I'm just applying those standards to this book. And we're just in general looking over the stories Anna shares, not so much the self-help information, because here's where things start to get a little on the gray side for the book, is that Anna likes to regurgitate things that she's heard from other self-help gurus. There's even a section in here, I think it's in chapter 6, where it's like, or maybe it's chapter 5. I'm almost positive I know where she got it from, because I have the book. And it's very similar to the book. Today we're going to go over chapter 5 and chapter 6, just because there's not a whole lot for me to like go over too much in chapter 6, but there is a lot in 5. So we're going to do 5 and 6 together, and then we're going to do chapter 7 by itself. It's exciting, you guys. There's some foreshadowing there. This book was written in 2018. I will be comparing 2018 Anna, who would have been like 35-ish, mid-30s, to today's Anna, who is 40, 41. Only because younger Anna says a lot that makes older Anna make sense. And also there's a lot of stuff that 35-year-old Anna is saying and doing and thinking that is very clearly stuff that 41-year-old Anna still does and thinks. And it's kind of interesting. In like the lack of growth, I guess, is kind of my thing. Anyway, thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. Thank you to my subscribers. Thank you to my members. You guys rock. Thank you to everybody who's going to hit the thumbs up button. And so let's do chapter 5. Chapter 5 is self-comparison, reframing negative self-talk. There's a lot of negative self-talk in this. All right, so this chapter, we start off with probably one of my favoriteest things. By the time I was 17, I pretty much fully turned my life around. You're 17, Anna. You're not even a legal adult yet. Not even like the low end of legal adult. What could you possibly have turned around? Like, you're no longer acting like a 16-year-old? I don't understand. This is 35-year-old Anna writing this, by the way. 35-year-old Anna thought that 17-year-old Anna was the bee's knees and could do no better. It's just a very weird way of looking at it. I had fundamentally changed the way I saw my capabilities and what I was capable of. You need an editor. I had become less angry and more focused. I was a new Anna. I don't I don't think so. I think you just matured, as most people do as they age. As you are no longer a child and you become an adult, most people go through this. It's part of being a teenager in your late teens. Like, I think we all had grand epiphanies around the ages of 17 to 19 because we're finishing up high school. Most of us have jobs. Many of us have bought cars, like crappy POSs, but they're still ours. You know, we have money and responsibility, and we're prepping to go to college, and we're getting ready for the next step in our lives, you know? I would say most people feel this way when they're at the age of 17. I don't think I get that Anna thinks that she's a unique and special case because I will read that to you in a minute. But I argue that this is what most people will do naturally because it's part of being a teenager, a late aged teenager. I would say people in their 20s to 23 probably feel this way too. Anyway, um, she says, however, the world didn't see me as such. I still only had a 2.0 GPA despite improving my grades. I worked hard to improve my social skills, but because of my previous behavior, those around me were wary of becoming my friend. And as the world around me refused to see what I'd fought so hard to become, which is what? I became trapped in a vicious cycle of self-doubt, loneliness, and I thought I was hopeless. I mean, again, this is what every teenager goes through. You're not convincing me that you're going through something special or that you've emerged a beautiful butterfly from the cocoon that you were in. This just sounds like typical teenage ennui to me. She does talk about how she had all these feelings that she was going to be a failure and sad for the rest of her life, and how she turned to what she called night cheese as her way of compensating for that. So at the young age of 17, we see that she's definitely using food as an emotional support here, an emotional crutch. And compare this to the story, I think it was in chapter 1, might have been chapter 2, where she tells the story of where she had snuck cookies at night. She says she was very young. And so she was stealing food in the middle of the night and got caught by her dad. I mean, we hear this kind of stuff with the 600-pound life people pretty frequently. Pretty much all of them will talk about how they would steal food as children and how they will eat emotionally. And I'm only mentioning this because Anna has never been a thin person, or even probably never even been a healthy weight. Anna always talks about herself as if she were the largest person in the room. And she's very tall, so there's a lot of that going on. But also, I think she's always been obese, even as a young child. So I think it's interesting, just me personally, I think it's interesting comparing the little tidbits that Anna has throughout this book with the typical storyline of 600-pound life people. Now, obviously, they're not every 600-pound person in the world, but it's a pretty frequent story that they all share this, hoarding and stealing food as a child and emotionally eating. She says, what I needed was a fresh start. If those around me weren't going to give me a second chance, their loss. Again, this is 35-year-old Anna. How dare you not be Anna's friend? Maybe I needed to be surrounded by new people who would give me a chance to make a good first impression. I don't disagree. Sometimes if you feel like you can't get anywhere where you're at, sometimes the best solution is to go someplace new and just try your best to start over, or, be the person that you want to be somewhere where people don't know who you are.
I don't have anything wrong with that. I think it's a tactic. It's a good something I've done myself. I've moved several times. Not necessarily to go like start anew. I didn't go west, young man. I didn't do any of that. It just so happens that every time you move, you're basically starting over. New friends, new work, new everything. So there you go. So I don't have anything wrong with this. This part is weird. So I dropped out of high school, got my GED, and began to research ways to get into college without a formal diploma. So totally reformed, completely different, non-problematic 17-year-old Anna. The only solution she could come up with to getting the treatment she believes she deserved was to run away from everything. Oh, and her parents let her do it. She's 17. I mean, my high school, you could drop out when you turned 18. This is US, by the way, because I know ages are different in different countries. But in the US, at least where I was, you could not withdraw yourself from high school unless you were 18. So in my experience, that would mean her parents signed off on this, or her parent. I know she lost her mom at some point young, and she hasn't talked about it yet. So her parents were okay with her giving up. And it would be different if like something tragic had happened and she had to leave, or if the school itself was like GTFO. Those are different circumstances. There are other unforeseen circumstances, life circumstances that might cause you to have to leave high school early. None of these things were going on. According to Anna, she just chose to quit and wanted to go to college. Your best option in this situation would have been to suck it up and get your high school diploma and then apply to college. Because I'm not saying you can't get into college with a GED. I went to college with several people who had their GEDs. I graduated from high school, so I don't know the process, but I know it can happen. I don't have anything against people with GEDs either. The people who went to my schools, and the people I worked with in the field who were GED graduates there was nothing different about them. This is my point. You would not have known if they didn't volunteer the information. So that part isn't the issue. The GED part is not the issue. The issue is at 17, she at best had another year of school left. You couldn't have just stuck with it and worked to get your GPA up to like 2.5. Most colleges that I was looking at back in the day, you had to have at least a 2.5 to go through like the regular application process. She was 5 points away from having the lowest possible GPA to get into college with. So she purposefully made her life more difficult here and wants to be lauded for it. And this is after telling me that I'm a completely different person. I changed everything. I changed my social skills. I changed my grades. I'm such an awesome student. So I dropped out of high school. Okay. I'm very confused. So she says, my crazy leap of faith to change my circumstances. One thing that I might consider that she hasn't said, but she has kind of said, and she will talk a little bit about later on in the book, is Anna appears to have been bullied quite a bit. She has a whole chapter on bullying, actually, that we will be getting into. And one thing I could see happening is that the bullying at her high school might have been to such a degree that it was better for her mental health to quit. I could see that. That's unfortunate, but it's one of those circumstances where it's like, okay, well, you have that. That's fine. As opposed to, I don't want to be in high school anymore, which is how she's making it sound. But I do wonder, getting down here, if maybe the real reason that she dropped out wasn't because she decided she was going to drop out and she needed a change. I think maybe more it might have been, personally, this is me saying this, that she was probably bullied to the point where it just wasn't a good idea to keep her in school anymore. But again, I don't understand why you wouldn't enroll her in a different school to finish out her high school education, because you can do that. You can switch like 2 weeks before, you know? I just don't understand why that wasn't the option. Why it was no more school, not moving schools. All right. And I know you can move schools pretty easily because I moved schools almost every 2 years when I was a kid. So up until high school. So there you have that. I don't have a lot of high school friends. Okay, so most college admission boards have exception committees, a place for students with unusual circumstances to make their case for admission. I definitely wasn't usual. All right, here's me going to be very critical. If Anna's story is that she dropped out of high school on her own because she just didn't want to be there anymore because she needed a change of scenery, there is nothing unusual about Anna. Anna is wealthy. Anna is privileged. Anna is white. Anna is healthy for the most part, other than her weight. And Anna chose to drop out of school. Nothing forced her out, according to her. All right? There is nothing special about her. Absolutely nothing. So her circumstances were anything but unusual. But Anna has to be the most special person in the room at all times. And again, this is 30-something-year-old Anna writing about 17-year-old Anna. And so, of course, 17-year-old Anna is the most specialist 17-year-old that has ever existed. And she says here, I was told that my determination to change and grow were admirable, and I was admitted. So you're telling me that you went in front of a committee that exists for the sole purpose of admitting students with difficult or unusual circumstances into school. Those students typically being people who come from backgrounds that are underprivileged, from racial groups that are typically overlooked, who have circumstances beyond their control that make them so that they need special accommodations in college to further their education. You're telling me that you went in front of a committee, Anna, who dropped out of high school because you just didn't like the vibe anymore. And they were like, oh, yeah, all of these other students over here, yeah, you're so much more admirable than them because you want to grow and change. Screw these kids. You want me to believe that? I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying, really? She went to one of the top 100 schools in the nation. They have students like Anna by the thousands. Why would they make any exception for her? There's nothing exceptional. Her grades aren't exceptional. She doesn't have any social programs that she was part of that were exceptional. She has no exceptional hobbies. She's not exceptionally academic or anything like that. There is nothing special about Anna. And she wants me to believe that a committee whose sole purpose is to help underprivileged students or students with unusual circumstances to get into college, and they went, yeah, come on in. You're admirable, girl. No, I don't believe that for a minute. Anyway, so here's one of those times where I'm like, the book needs an editor. Because we go from this story that I've been going on about for the last, 10 minutes or so, to this practice of approaching yourself with love, humanity, and mindfulness is called self-compassion. What the hell are you talking about? Where did this come from? You have been telling me a story about how at 17 you dropped out of high school and then somehow managed to get into one of the top 100 schools because your admirable growth. And now we're going to talk about love, self-love, humanity, and mindfulness? There's not a damn thing in that story that aligns with this sentence. What happened? Or you just done telling the story and didn't know how to transition? Because that's how it comes off. Very jarring. All right, so we get into a section, an introduction to self-compassion. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the self-help talk itself, because she really is just repeating things that a number of other people have said in the most generic way possible. So there's no specialty to it. There's no putting my own spin on it kind of a thing. There's no brand building here. It's boring because I've heard it and I've seen it and I've read it from so many places before. Um what we do get, here's another problem with Anna not citing her sources, which we will get into here very quickly soon. Since Anna does not back up her facts with citations, I as a reader cannot trust the factualness of it. Therefore, everything that Anna presents in this book where it's not cited, which is everything, can be argued to be Anna's personal experience or her personal opinion. And since those are the two things that we are basing the 90% of this book on, I, as the reader, can compare my own personal opinions and my own personal experiences to Anna's in the book, and I am equally as valid. My points are equally as valid as Anna's. This is important because Anna says, with no citation or factual backing it up, factual evidence, it's more likely when you analyze yourself that you'll find you've placed the emphasis solely on the desired outcome. As a result, you tend to see things in black and white, and you either achieved the ideal result or you didn't. She's talking about how when you see your friend trying something new and you're supportive of your friend because you know that it's new and they're doing their best, but when you try to do something, you're hypercritical of yourself. The problem is, I don't do this. It's black and white thinking. You either achieve the ideal result or you didn't. I don't think that way. If I don't succeed at something, I mean, yes, I haven't succeeded at it, but my next step is not, oh, you're a failure. It's, why didn't I succeed? How can I improve it for the next time? Maybe when I was a kid, I had very black and white thinking, because I think most children do. You either win or you didn't. Those are it, second place is just the first loser kind of a thing. I think as we grow older and we mature, again, this is my opinion. Y'all can argue with me, and your argument is just as valid as mine. But I think as most people, as they grow and mature, you learn to lose, and you learn to learn from losing. And so it's not as traumatic. I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there that just never get over it. I think the majority of people learn to understand that, like, especially if you're new at something, you're going to fuck up, But for Anna, this is 30-year-old Anna writing this. Anna still has that black and white mentality. She's either good or she's bad. There's no in between. There's no learning. There's no, hey, I had a good time. There's no, wow, that was fun. There's no, hey, I'm just doing this for shits. None of that. You either win or you lose. And that's still the mentality that she's carrying forward today. And we see that with the running thing that she just recently did, the 5K thing. And we'll get more into that in chapter 7. But she's constantly like, I'm going to win. I'm going to do this race. Yada, yada, yada. I'm a runner. I'm a runner. I'm a runner. And at best, she's a fast shuffler. Like, even the Run Lab people are like, you don't even walk right? So let's work on walking first and then we'll run. But Anna's a runner. In chapter 5, this is chapter 5. From chapter 5 to chapter 7, I've noticed a shift in tone and a shift in when she's presenting scientific evidence. She starts to at least insert the name of the researcher. She doesn't tell us if they're a doctor or a master's or any of their credentials. She could be making names up. She doesn't give citations of the research that they've worked on. She doesn't mention if this whatever she's quoting came from a report, from an interview, from a blog post. She doesn't say where it's coming from. So it's still not a citation, but at least she's putting a name down, I guess. She says self-compassion, as explained by Kirsten Neff, a pioneer in this psychological approach. Where do they work? Are they independent? Are they with a university? Are they part of a think tank? Do they practice? Are they just research? What what approach? How did they come up with this? How did they come up with this idea? This three core elements. Like, where did this come from? Now you've given me a name that's more than we've had up to this point, but it's still not a citation. Close, so close, but you're missing a crap ton of important information here. All right, understanding self-kindness, humanity, and mindfulness. We start that section off with, as a type A person. Look, man, I don't know where y'all are from. I'm just letting you know, when we say someone's a type A, it's not a compliment. Usually it means you're incredibly high strung, you can't let things go, and you constantly have to be first. And it's not a compliment. She gives us another story here, which kind of backs up my point that being type A isn't the greatest thing on the planet. Personal opinion. If you're someone who's type A, it's cool. We can probably still be friends. I'm just probably going to point out when you need to like relax a little. She says, whenever I do a report or project, it can't just be good. It has to be great. Perfectionism is a form of procrastination. I don't know who needs to hear that. She says, I remember that in college, I pulled an all-nighter finishing the most insane final group project one could imagine. I worked my fingers to the bone and gave the rest of the group only one assignment, the PowerPoint for our presentation. Ooh, how many people were in your group? Because if I were in your group and the only thing you told me to do was make a PowerPoint and it's like me and two other people, that's not going to fly. I would not appreciate that. Also, were you the leader of the group? Like, was it your job to do this? Like, did we vote that you were going to be project lead? Did the teacher appoint you to be a project lead? I know that happens sometimes. Why were you the one making all the calls? Or did you take it upon yourself to be the one to do the group project because you're so type A, you didn't think anybody else is capable of doing a project? A college level project? We don't even know what this is. There's some PowerPoint and a presentation. That's all we know at this point. Also, keep in mind, I had charts and graphs and graphs. That's a sentence, by the way. I had action items and insights. So you have all of this stuff on hand. This is important to keep in mind for later. Anyway, I worked my finger to the bone. And as I rolled up to meet my group 20 minutes before class, exhausted and running purely on adrenaline. Okay. Honestly, what I'm hearing here is somebody who's really unprepared. You know, I get getting keyed up for a presentation. I do, because especially one that's like, I don't know, your final presentation, it's going to make you a little nervous. A group project, most people don't like working in groups because they're afraid that the rest of the group's going to fail them. If you don't allow the group to attempt to do something, then they're probably going to fail you. It's called a group project, not a you project. Anyway, I got the disturbing news that the rest of the group had not made the PowerPoint. I don't know. At this point in the story, I'm confused. What were you doing if all you had to do was the PowerPoint? Like, if all the rest of the group had to do was PowerPoint, and you were up late the night before to the last minute putting together pie charts and graphs and all of the things that you would put in a PowerPoint. Keep in mind, she says she's got graphs and action items and insights. These are all things that you put on the PowerPoint slides as part of the presentation. Okay? If she was up till the night before making all of these and then shows up to class 20 minutes before class and she's still running on adrenaline, when did the rest of the group get all of these charts and graphs and insights so that they could make the PowerPoint. There's a timeline here. But she's mad at the group for not making the PowerPoint. All right, let's pretend like they had everything they needed to make the PowerPoint and just didn't. Let's pretend. I spent the next 30 minutes desperately trying to create a presentation on no sleep with out of whack emotions. Let's say the results were interesting. Again, Anna is the one who's mentioned that she had all the data and information that you would typically use to make a PowerPoint presentation. She was the one in control of all of that. The rest of the group didn't have that. And she doesn't mention giving them access to it. So should I then also assume they had no access to this information? Okay. And this is what, 20 years ago at most? There would have been Google's. There was probably, God, what did they call Microsoft One before they had that? There was a share folder in Microsoft that you could have been using. You could have been using the computer lab together as a group. There were many, many, many ways that you could have been sharing information in real time with the rest of your group, even 20 years ago. Okay. And she's the one that gives the presentation. So literally, there's nothing in this group project that Anna didn't do. Superhero Anna is the one that did this entire project because the rest of her group were incompetent. But I still argue, there's a timeline here that we're conveniently not mentioning to make Anna look good, I think, in my opinion. She says, I was gutted. I was a failure. Well, I mean, I guess if you took the entire project on your own back, yeah, you kind of failed at the group part of the project, which was probably more important than the actual project. And then she says, as I sat there crying over a PowerPoint in the hallway outside, I just want you guys to think about that. And then think about how earlier in the book, she talked about how she had been venting to her boss in the future at this point, and how the boss was like, is this doing anything for you? And she was like, oh, and I immediately was shut down. Yeah, because your boss doesn't want to listen to it. And then bring it all the way to modern day era Anna, where she's having a meltdown over a Michelin star chef telling her that her tarts are ugly. It's a Michelin star chef. I can't think of a single thing that I could cook that a Michelin star chef would be impressed with. I'm just putting that out there. I can't even impress my own cousin who's just a regular chef. Okay? I'm just saying. You're not pleasing a Michelin star chef. And yet Anna's having a meltdown. Like, most people are not even going to interact with a Michelin star chef in their lifetime. And your reaction is to go cry in a fucking corner over it. Okay. It's the menu, Anna style. Anyway, so she's crying in the hallway because her professor doesn't like the presentation that she put together. And the professor comes out and says, people mess up on presentations every day. It'll happen all the time in your career. Get used to it. And she says, it's like this teacher had popped into my brain and delivered the exact words I needed to tell myself. There is a history of you not taking criticism well. You don't take failure well, and you don't take criticism well. And you want me to believe, here in this book, right now, that you were like, oh, you're right. Oh, that's what I needed to hear. Thanks, Professor. No, I don't believe that for a minute. All right, just kind of a content warning here. Anna's going to talk about the passing of her sister, kind of. And I'm going to say some shit. So, either skip or it's fine if you need to tap out. It's fine. Keep in mind, people handle grief differently. So, she decides to talk about self-kindness. She says bad things happen, but practicing self-kindness helps us to rationalize them as a temporary experience or reaction, process them, and move forward. And then from that sentence goes into, when my sister dies, when my sister died, so there's a common thread between the presentation that you gave and your sister dying. Weird. Okay. Tell me more. I distinctly remember sitting in my apartment feeling terribly alone in my trauma. Fair. Why did this happen to me? Why is she writes that several times. Why is this happening to me? Why am I alone in this experience? Why me? Your sister died. I'm so struck by this. I can't even really put into words why this is so, it's kind of upsetting to me, honestly. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, everybody processes death differently, so I guess. But this one just really hit me in a weird way, and I didn't like it. And then she goes on to remember, we're talking about her sister passing away. It's an agonizing feeling that's not only reserved for when we face extreme traumas. We feel this pain in smaller disappointments as well. Have you ever been in a class or working where you were really challenged and you felt you were the only one making mistakes and you said, "Why me?" This is such a weird place to put this conversation, I guess, is the other part of this thing to me. She goes from talking about a failed group project to the death of her sister, her younger sister, to, again, talking about feeling challenged in a career or at school. All of this is on the same level for her? Like, not doing well at a project, being too challenged at a task, and your sister's death are all on the same level? I'm sure somewhere, I'm sure other people have different opinions, and that's fine. This is just my opinion. So there you have it. And that's it. That's all we talk about. That's all the information we get about the sister's death. I don't know what I was supposed to take away from that experience, other than I now know that her sister passed away, and I know how her sister passed away. This would not have been the place that I would have put that story in there. And again, it's another one of those situations where I'm like, a editor would have been great, because an editor would have been like, hey, this whole paragraph and a half that you spend talking about your sister's death and how it affected you personally and like literally no one else apparently. Maybe not this section. Maybe this isn't the place for it. This is very strange. Because then we go on to, when I was younger, I had the worst temper and my brother loved to torment and set me off. That tracks. From what she has told us up to this point, her saying she had the worst temper and was very easily set off as a child, tracks. She said he liked to poke me to get Anna to freak out over something ridiculous. I was an overreactor and was terrible at being mindful of my emotions. Okay, first off, yeah, that tracks. And secondly, you're talking about being a child. I don't know a lot of mindful children. I know a lot of terrible siblings who love to poke at each other because that's apparently what kids do. It's just like, yeah, your siblings are your worst enemy. They're your best friends and your worst enemies. And then we do research shows. What research, Anna? Cite your sources. Just tell me anything. Anything. Like, give me a name. That would be, at least I gave you credit for that. You almost cited it. You're not even trying anymore. Research shows. We're back to old Anna here. This is why I'm like, these chapters have the tone of two different writers. Anyway, we move into the section of the benefits of a self-compassionate life. A study of students. What study? Who, where, when, why, what was the results? What was even the setup of the damn study? Like, dude, anything would be great. And then we have like a really crazy typo. It's weird. Editor would have been great. We move on to the section, how to practice self-compassion. All right, so here's the section where I'm talking about, I'm almost positive I know where she's gotten this from, which on the one hand, I'm like, oh, I recognize that reference. And then on the other hand, I'm like, okay, maybe not. It's not an original idea in either setting. So One of the tricks I use to really help isolate my inner perspective whenever I'm feeling down is to stop what I'm doing and think through what's making me feel that way. I continue to ask myself questions until I get to the root of the negative beliefs. This exercise that she goes on to outline comes from is okay, it's identical to an exercise in a book that some of you might know, many people probably don't, called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And the exercise is called Finding the Why. And the point of the exercise is you take a question and you start asking yourself why. And the point of it, and it's meant to be a conflict resolving exercise. So you pick a conflict and you say why, and then you answer that why, and then you ask why again, and then you answer that why, and it can be how or why or what, that's the point. You start asking questions until you get to the point where you can't break the answer down any further, and that's the root of the problem. It's an exercise. It's not original to that book. Don't get me wrong. It's just the first place I've ever encountered it being written out like that. And Anna also goes through a written out version of it, very simplified. And I'm just like, I recognize this to the point where it invoked the memory of that exercise from a book that I probably haven't read in the better part of 10 years. Okay. I'm not saying she needs to cite it because I don't think I would be impressed if she read it. But my point is like, that's how much she's just parroting stuff. She's parroting stuff to the point where I recognize it almost verbatim coming from a completely different book. That's not necessarily a self-help book. It's a self-improvement book, but it's more like how to teach yourself to think like Leonardo da Vinci, how to teach yourself to be more creative, more open to life experiences, more worldly. It's a self-improvement in that aspect, not a self-improvement in like improve your mental health. She wraps up the chapter with her little box of how to practice whatever. She's got her little 3 steps in here. Whatever. I don't really have any other words for it. We're going to do chapter 6 along with chapter 5 because I think I can get through chapter 6 fairly quickly. Chapter 6 is bullying, overcoming bullies, and naysayers. Keep in mind from the title, Anna puts naysayers and bullies in the same category. If you don't agree with her or if you don't like how she's doing something, you are the same as a bully to Anna. Which honestly explains a lot about how modern Anna does not interact with her audience and usually gets pretty feisty when she does address criticism. She doesn't handle criticism very well. And it's because she views any kind of criticism as bullying. She starts off the chapter with, I can still remember how it felt in middle school to be alone. People would chase me down the hall screaming Kool-Aid Man or whatever terribly uncreative way they had come up with that day to comment on my weight. Again, going back to Anna's always been one of the larger kids and was very much picked on for it. I have a problem with this whole tirade, and we'll get to it when we get to the end of it because this is just the beginning of it. Anyway, she goes on to talk about how she was bullied. It kind of reads like an after school special. I'm not saying it couldn't happen in real life. It just seems like one of those like extreme bullying situations you see on like an after school special. I don't think many people remember what the hell those are. After school, after you would get home from school back in the day and you would get off the bus because latchkey kids were a real thing, you would go home and you would microwave your snack and you would sit down in front of the television and you would watch after school cartoons or the after school special, which would be a brief movie made for television that usually addressed some kind of like issue going on in like child and tween and teen life. It was supposed to be a story, a moral story where you're supposed to learn not to be a bully, don't do drugs, that kind of stuff. Some of them were better than others. But We all kind of understand what they were. Um, she says, in a world where I very much would rather have been able to completely disappear, I was forced to stand out. Okay. Um, I just highlighted this piece because it was weird. She says, I'm quite certain my middle school experience was not unique. Maybe while reading this chapter above, your eyes began to swell with big, juicy tears. And I just think that's weird. I just think that's a really weird phrase. Big, juicy tears. No, it's kind of creepy now. I'm not crying. I'm just kind of creeped out a little bit, not gonna lie. She goes on to talk about a moment in one of the lunches. She goes on to talk about a moment at lunch where one of the attractive high school boys threw a Little Debbie oatmeal cookie at her. And she says, "Yes, I remember the exact cookie that spawned my reaction." The lady doth protest too much. Um, anyway, so apparently she takes the cookie and walked over to the kid and his group of chortling friends and proceeds to smash the cookie into the kid's hair. Um, the way she writes it is very weird. All the time shouting, "I am the beast," as she mushes Cookie into this kid's hair. To be fair, she was probably taller than this guy anyway, so probably wasn't that hard to do. And just like, it just feels like something you would see on a like one of those like How Not to Be an Ass kids shows, you know? She says, "I wish I could resolve the story in this moment of triumph of good over evil." Going back to Anna's black and white thinking that she's demonstrated throughout this entire book. You are either with Anna or you are against Anna. There's no in between. You are either good if you are Anna's friend, or if you try in any way to befriend Anna, you are good, and otherwise you are evil. We see the same mentality when she decided to trauma dump on a fellow student in high school, and the girl very politely was like, "Wow, man, it sounds like you're going through some stuff." And then later Anna hears her talking to her friends and going, "Wow, I can't believe this girl dropped this note in my locker." And Anna was like, "This girl is evil and needs to burn in hell." And this was adult Anna writing about it. This wasn't teenage Anna writing about teenage Anna's experience. This was adult Anna writing about a teenage girl who she still to this day apparently thinks needs to burn in hell because she didn't befriend Anna after Anna trauma dumped on her. Would you have? I just She says that she had been punished for this moment, but the boys weren't, and they went back to harassing her with vengeance. She goes on to say, "I would try dealing with bullying in every way ever shown in a textbook drama." It kind of read like a textbook drama, you know? So she goes on to talk about the reason why I think this chapter can be done very quickly, other than that story, which I don't know, man. It just reads weird. Anyway, she goes on to talk about why people bully and why we should. It's hard to explain. She talks about why people become bullies. She talks about how bullies are typically bullied themselves. She talks about how bullying is a learned behavior and kind of is trying to tell us to have compassion for bullies. It comes off in a way because she kind of gives this chain of events where she's like, people who are bullied become bullies, and then they bully other people in order to regain a sense of power. So we, the greater we, should look with compassion on bullies because we don't know what they've gone through themselves. And the whole chapter kind of reads in a way where Anna has at some point become a bully herself. And it didn't sit well with her, which it hopefully did not. But she, instead of like owning it, she's trying to explain it away. This is just how it reads to me, an individual person, okay? It just comes off as she's setting up a defense for herself because she knows she did this to someone else. She bullied someone else or someone's else. And so she wants to set up a defense for herself. Well, you guys, yeah, I bullied those people, but I was bullied too. Also, just going off of the stories that she's told up to this point, up to chapter 6, people didn't want to be her friend because she was easily set off. She was very angry. She had a reputation, and people didn't want to be her friend. I'm just saying, this is how it sounds to me. We got research on shared characteristics for those who bully. Cite your sources, Anna. She says this does not justify or imply that bullying behavior is acceptable. Instead, I hope it helps you to better understand why people bully others, what their motivations are, and why they might have chosen to bully you. Who are you talking to? Why are you setting up a defense? I'm not saying she's not right. And I can't verify if she is or isn't because she cites no sources whatsoever. Um, but I think I've read places before that, bullying behavior is learned. It's typically some kind of reaction to deeper issues going on in that individual's life. It is a power play. So I also don't think it necessarily means that someone has to be traumatized by bullies to be a bully. It's a power thing. Sometimes people are just assholes. It just reads like she's trying to set up a defense for herself. I wonder if down the road, because we've got several chapters left, we don't hear a story about how she was a bully to somebody, and she's going to refer back to this chapter. She goes on to tell us that self-reflection is one of the main components of a high emotional IQ, or emotional quotient. An EQ. I didn't even know people talked about EQ anymore. I thought that was like a fad that had died out. Apparently not. And it turns out that people with higher EQs are less fazed by bullying. Ah, okay. Tell us more about what you think about yourself. I highlighted this one. There is nothing more liberating than learning to stand up for yourself without being an asshole in the process. I would like to draw everyone's attention back to Running Gate, where someone on the running trail told Anna, good job getting out there, to which Anna immediately has a meltdown because how dare this person dehumanize her by encouraging her, and then proceeds to embellish the story further by saying that later she encountered the same woman on the trail and the same woman said the same thing to her again. So clearly this woman was targeting Anna because reasons. And so Anna proceeded to basically yell at the woman on the trail, "You don't know me!" And then said something else tart, and then ran all the way back to her car as fast as she could so she could get on her phone and make a message, a social media message about how she's I think she said she was petty. I'm so petty, but in such a great way. So is that standing up for yourself without being an asshole? Is that what that is? Is that what we were doing that day? Just putting it out there. She tells us how to cope with bullying. More research has shown. These are quotes, by the way. I'm not simplifying these sentences. When I say research has shown, that's literally the sentence. Is that your sources? She mentions she plays pinball. I highlighted that just because I'm like, I play pinball. That's pretty cool. I didn't know Anna played pinball. I have no reason not to believe that she plays pinball. It's kind of one of those niche things that when you see another person playing pinball or admitting to playing pinball, you're just like, oh, you play pinball? It's just one of those things. Sorry. If you play pinball, let me know. How to stop the bullying cycle. And here she shifts from what we would consider bullying to what most people would consider criticism, which are not the same thing. One of the most powerful skills you can develop in your lifetime is the ability to give someone feedback without attacking them. So feedback to Anna is attacking. And then she says, If you are providing feedback but not helping them realize the benefits of making those changes, you are not giving feedback, you're bullying them. So, yes, any feedback, anything that is not, Anna, you are the most amazing person on the planet. Anything other than that is bullying to Anna. Um, you can just be bad at giving feedback. You can just be bad at talking to people and thereby giving bad feedback. It doesn't mean you're a bully. It just means you suck at giving feedback. Okay? There just because you criticize someone does not mean you're being a bully. It means you saw something that you felt needed to be criticized or corrected or what have you. It's not You're not trying to demoralize or dehumanize or get power over an individual simply because you feel like there was something you needed to speak up about. That's not bullying. But for Anna, it is. So that's the end of chapter 6. So we did 5 and 6. A lot happened in 5 and 6. But I feel like chapter 6 was brief enough that it could be condensed. It Chapter 6 was a weird chapter for me, only because it really does feel like she's setting up a defense for herself for later on in the book here. How many chapters do we have? I know I check this like every time and I forget every time. 12. There's 12 chapters. We're okay. So we're halfway through the book at this point. Yay! It just feels like she's going to be setting up some kind of defense for herself for a story that she's going to share, cuz she apparently has no problem sharing stories about herself that are just like WTF moments. So there's that. Chapter 7 is going to be interesting. Only because I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a preview here. And by preview, I mean I'm going to talk about it very briefly. Chapter 7 is goals, creating a cause for self-celebration. In chapter 7, she talks about being a runner. This is the first time I've seen Anna talk about running. And if you recall any of the 5K drama, her becoming a runner, she talks about how she used to be a runner in the past. This is the past she's talking about. There's this, and someone sent me a link to the Wayback Machine where another person has archived the very old posts from Anna from like 2017 and 2000. I think some of them go back to 2011 on her old blog, Glitter Plus Lasers, where Lasers is a different person. She's Glitter and someone else is Lasers. I don't know who that is. If you guys know, let me know. Either let me know in the comments section, or I have an Instagram that's Tiny Blue Anthropologist. Feel free to send me a DM on that to let me know. I don't post a lot on there though, so if you follow it, cool. I would like to know who Lasers is, just out of curiosity. And yeah, this is where, when Anna of today talks about how she used to be a runner, this is what she's talking about. So, and we'll talk about the blog, and we'll talk about her previous running escapades. Yeah. We'll talk about that in chapter 7. So there's your preview for that. If you've made it this far in the video, bless you. Go ahead and put a cat down in the comments section, since we were graced by my little furry distractions earlier in the video. And let me know what you guys think. If you're reading along, let me know what you guys think of the chapters. We did 5 and 6 again, just, in case someone forgot. If you're doing the audiobook, let me know. And yeah, just in general, tell me what you guys think so far. So thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. Thank you again to my subscribers. Thank you to my members. You guys rock. Thank you to everybody who's going to hit the thumbs up button. Ding, ding. And I will see everybody in chapter 7. Bye.
This is my outro music. You can't copyright strike me because it's just me singing. This is my outro music. Thank you for watching. See you next time.